topic for today is percents. So, what is a percent? We've talked about ratios, rates, and proportions, and they're all a comparison of numbers. Percents are also a comparison, but now we're comparing numbers out of 100. So, let's take a practical example here. If we've got 56 out of 70 on a test, what percent did you get? We're going to divide this because we know that this line in the middle means division, and we're going to multiply it by by 100. So 56 divided by 70, then we're going to multiply it by 100. That gives us 80%. What if we had the reverse? Sarah got 60% on a test. What's her numeric mark out of 30? Now, we can use the knowledge that we have on proportions to solve this. So if I create my magic square here, I know that 60% is 60 over 100. So my first row, I'm going to talk about the part. The bottom row, I'm going to talk about the whole. Now, on the test, the whole test was worth 30%. We want to know what mark she had. Now that we've set this up, we can put it into our fraction and solve. So 60 over 100 is equal to x over 30. Let's cross multiply. 60 times 30 is equal to 100x. Throw that into your calculator. 1800 is equal to 100x. Now we're going to divide both sides by 100. And we have x is equal to 18. So Sarah got 18 out of 30 on the test. Pause the video. Try converting these fractions into percents. Right, so there's multiple ways to represent a percent. The most familiar way would probably be using this percent symbol. And this is a percent as a word. We've also talked about a percent as a fraction, and we're going to talk a little bit more about a percent represented as a decimal. Now, if we are doing math, we have to be expressing our percent as a decimal. Okay, so we've talked about how do we convert things into a different number. First, we talked about fractions, and we said if we were to convert it into a decimal, we just divide. Now, a fraction into a percent, We first got the decimal, and then we took the decimal and we multiplied it by 100 to make it a numeric percent. Now, if we're going the other way, let's say we're going from a word into a fraction. We're going to make it a fraction by putting it over 100. To go from a word to a decimal, we're going to divide it by 100. And whatever decimal we get is the decimal value. The trickiest one is converting from a decimal to a fraction. When we're going from a decimal to a fraction, we need to make our decimal into a whole number. And then we're going to put it over 1, and the number of zeros will depend on how many decimal spots you had. So I've put 1 and then some blanks. Let me explain what those blanks are again. The number of zeros depend on the number of decimal spots you had. Example here. Let's convert these to the other two forms. We're given 0.853, and this is a decimal. Make it into a percent and a fraction. So first, if we're converting a decimal into a percent, we need to multiply by 100. Second one, if we're converting a decimal into a fraction, we need to make it a whole number and put it over 1 over something with lots of zeros. Okay, so 0.5 as a percent, we're going to take 0.853, multiply it by 100. In other words, we're moving it 2 decimals to the right. So 85.3. So here's a side note. You can move the decimal 2 spots right. So this is the same as multiplying it by 100. Next, let's express it as a fraction. 0.853, we know that there are 3 decimal spots. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to first make the numerator. The numerator is a whole number, 853, and converting it as at the denominator, we're going to place 1 and zeros equal to the number of decimal spots. So 1, 2, 3. Next example, 1.85% is in words. Make it into a fraction and make it into a decimal. Okay, first, as a fraction, we're going to put it over 100. So we have 1.85 over 100. This is how you write it as a fraction. Next, as a decimal, we're going to divide by 100. So dividing by 100 is the same as moving the decimal spot 2 units left. I have 1.85. If I move it 2 units to the left, I would have 0.0185. I've taken the decimal here and I've gone 1, 2 to the right. Pause the video now and try these questions on your own. Convert the fraction, percent, or decimal into the other two forms. Here are some of the solutions, and the ones that I've left blank, I'd like to talk a little bit more about it. Now let's look at this decimal, 0.057. As a fraction, I count that there are 3 decimal spots. So I know that the denominator will have 3 zeros. 57 divided by 1,000. 3 zeros correspond with the number of decimal spots here. As a fraction, we're going to take this and multiply it by 100. I'm taking the decimal spot and moving it 2 units to the right. So we have 5.7%. Okay, 1.32. 2 decimal spots, we're going to put it over 100 because 100 has 2 zeros. As a percent, take my decimal spot, I'm moving it 2 steps to the right, 132%. Okay, 0.092. Let's leave it the way it is, 0.092, and put it over 100. Now, moving it on as a decimal, we're going to take the decimal and we're dividing. So we're moving 2 steps to the left. 1, 2. We now have a lot of zeros. 0.00092. 235%. Let's make that into a fraction. We get 235 over 100. And as a decimal, we're taking our decimal point and moving it 2 units to the left. We get 2.35. Let's do a word problem now. The population in Afghanistan was 34,124,800 in 2017. 38.2% of the population is literate. How much is that? So, how many people are literate? Literacy is defined as someone 15 years and older who can read and write in any language. So, a little hint here, whenever you see the word of, it means multiply. So, really, the question is asking you, what is 38.2% of the population? So, let me convert this part into a math sentence. I know that 38.2% is equivalent to 0.382. We have to express it as a decimal since we are using math with it. Of the population, so the word of means to multiply. I'm putting a dot to represent multiply, and the population 34,124,800. Let's throw this into our calculator. 34. And the answer we have 13,030 13,035,673.6. Now, is it possible for us to have zero point 0.6 of a person? Not really. Now, even these numbers at the end, because we're talking about 13 million, it's such a large number, having the values at the end in the hundreds is fairly insignificant. So I'm going to round our answer. I'm going to round it to the nearest million. So we could say approximately 13 million people in Afghanistan is literate. In class, we talked about the advantages, the pros and the cons of having people who are literate. I'm not going to talk about that here, but it was a good discussion in class. Another example that we have is on discounts and taxes. We have a fancy used phone that was priced at $175. There's a 20% sale right now. What's the sale price? Let's strategize here. We know that discounts mean it's subtracting, so the price will be lower. We're going to take our original price minus the sale amount, and we get our sale price. This is representing it in words. Now, I can discuss this in percents as well. The original price was 100%. I'm going to subtract 20%, and this is equal to the sale price. Let's come back to the second part. Now, the first one, when I'm doing it in words, I want 20% of 175. So, as a math equation, I have 0.20 times 175. Throw it into your calculator and you'll get $35. So, after 35% off, what's our sale price? 175 minus $35 is equal to 140. That's one way to do it. A second way to do it is using our percents. Now we know that in the percent, we paid 100% if that was the regular price. But we're getting a 20% discount. So ultimately, we're only paying 80%. So if I found 80% of the original price, then I would know that that's what I paid. If I'm paying 80% of the original, I can write that 0.80 times 175. Let's put that into your calculator. 0.8 times 175, and we get the answer 140. We got the same answer in both spots, except that when we solved it as a percent by saying how much we're actually paying for, we're getting the same answer, but in one less step. Now, it's up to you how you would like to do it. I find that the second way is a bit quicker. Now, since this is purchased at a store, not at a school, there's 13% HST on it. What is the after tax price? Let's talk about the different ways we could solve it. Now, if we're talking about it in words, we could say we have the original price and we have to add the tax to get the final price. If we're doing it in terms of percents, I know that the original percent that I'm paying is 100. I'm adding tax of 13%. But at the end, I'm paying 113% of the original. Okay, let's solve this first as words. 13% of 140. So this is, we're taking the sale price. As a math sentence, I would write 0.13 times 140. 0.13 times 140, that is 18.2. This is our tax. So our final price, I have 140 plus $18.20, and we have 158.20 as the final price. Let's solve this one using our percent method. So if we're solving as a percent, we're now paying 113% of the original. As a math sentence, I would say I have 1.13 of the original 140. 1.13 times 140. We skip right to the answer and we have 158 and 20 cents. Two different ways we get to the same answer again. You can choose which way works best for you. For extra practice, there are some homework questions here to find the sale price and the total amount after the tax, and then some questions for percentages.